I'm Joe Kane.
I'm Dan Kane.
I'm Sal Conca.
And I'm Wayne Heckler.
And this is The Imperfect Podcast.
Don't forget to check us out at hecklerkane.com and everywhere on social media.
To the bumper.
So today we're here with Kyle Hester, who was born in New Orleans. To a professional football player. His father is Ray Hester of the New Orleans Saints, which is pretty cool. Kyle is an actor and a producer and has been in some notable films like Zombie with a Shotgun that's coming out, and as well as Preacher 6, which is in production right now. So Kyle, welcome to the Imperfect Podcast.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm glad that we can all be imperfect together. I'm very comfortable now.
Yeah, we are as imperfect as it gets, and we love it that way.
Takes the pressure off.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
It's like apologizing, at the beginning of a party. So then whatever happens, you're covered already.
Oh, I love it. Apologies first. That's fantastic. It's like all bets are off after that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What happens on the podcast stays on the podcast until we distribute it.
Right.
So let's get to know you a little bit. Where did you grow up? Obviously, reading your bio on IMDb, we know you were born in New Orleans. Did you spend your youth there, or where did you land for most of your childhood?
Well, yes, I was born in New Orleans, and that's where most of my family is, and then I grew up in Houston. Okay. So from the fourth grade all the way through high school was in Houston. Nice. So I definitely have the Southern experience.
Cool.
And yeah, it was cool.
So how long did it take you before you got out to LA?
Man, basically I got in my Mustang when I graduated high school, and I drove to California.
Badass. So what year Mustang?
It was a '69 fastback.
Wow, nice.
Now we're talking.
It was so nice. It's one of those things where if I knew now what you know what I mean. If I knew, jeez.
I think Jim Morrison drove.
I'd have lived in that.
Yeah. Cool, man. That's awesome.
All right. Well, what was the first project that you got involved with? Was it before you got to LA, or was it after you got to LA?
Okay. Well, since you don't know how my life weaved through the country, it wasn't as linear as that. So I came out to LA, and then I ended up going to school at USIU in San Diego for a semester doing musical theater. And then I was like, I think probably don't want to make a career out of musical theater. So then I ended up going to Cal Arts, which is up here in Valencia. And then after that, I moved to New York and lived in Atlanta, and then ended up back here in the early '90s. So it was a trip around the country.
Cool. Nice. So that you're a well-traveled dude.
Now, since you said, are you a musician also? Growing up in New Orleans, you got good music, you got good food, and I saw on your reel you did a film about what you were playing guitar and singing. Do you do that in real life as well?
Well, I do sing, but I am not a musician.
Okay.
So, but basically, the guy that wrote that song that in the clip in my acting reel that you saw, it was his guitar, and he's like, "All right, here are these 3 chords. Get to know those, right. And that's what you're going to be doing." I was like, "All right, I can do that."
Cool. We know a lot of musicians that can only play 3 chords, so that's not a big deal.
A lot of bands made it famous just playing 3 chords, as a matter of fact.
I can't play anything more than 3 chords, so that's...
It's like Ralph Macchio in Crossroads, right? He didn't play guitar.
You know what? Between all of us, we could have a really bitchin' kind of guitar, situation.
Oh, hell yeah.
Combine all the parts.
I'll just jam out. You take the A and the C, and I'll get the G, and, whatever.
5-part harmony.
Well, Kyle, when you actually see this podcast, if you look behind us, and those who follow the podcast regularly, we have a wall of guitars hanging behind us. That's our kind of our thing.
It's not just for show.
Okay, it's not just for show. We do play, actually.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, I'm glad that I got to psychically talk about guitars.
Cool, man. Well, good deal. So musical theater, that wasn't your thing, huh?
Well, no, I love doing it, but it was one of those things where, the choice was, what do I want to do in life?
Correct.
So that was the thing. So, and then I had always wanted to do film, so it was a matter of what's going to get me to doing film as opposed to touring the country and doing Broadway and, all that kind of stuff, which I know some friends of mine, are in New York and have been doing Broadway for forever. They went to the same high school that I did.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's all it's just the choices we make.
And sometimes you get locked into doing something. It's hard to break out once you do that. So you're right. You have to choose wisely.
You have the performer bugs, but what performance bug? But what actually drew you to film and acting and drew you away from the musical theater and other things like that? So what appealed to you about acting?
Okay, let's cut to the 7th grade, and I'm watching Fame, the TV show. You remember that show, Fame?
Yeah,
Absolutely, definitely. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and I'm watching this guy, Leroy, and he's on stage, and he's dancing and singing and jumping over mannequins and stuff like that, and everybody was like, having a great time, and I'm like, holy shit, I gotta do this. That looks awesome. So I didn't know what I was getting into, but that was it. I saw Fame and Leroy dancing, and I was like, that looks like a blast. Let's do that.
That's great. And I love Leroy's line, I speaks how I likes. That always stuck in my mind for some reason. That was Leroy. But you're right. It looks so much fun. It's like, hey, man, if I could do that for a living, man, look at these guys. They're having a ball. I felt the same way. That's awesome.
That's fantastic. It's like, I think once it gets in there, it's like something resonates, and whatever it is, it's like you get that one thing, and it's like, all right, let's do that. And hopefully, you can do something with it, or it becomes an awesome hobby, but you always got to do what you love doing.
Definitely.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm looking at your IMDb, and it shows here your first credited role here was Rock and Roll Fantasy, and you played Phipps during the Panty Raid. So I want to hear more about that.
You know what? That's funny. That actually was the very first film that the guys from the Asylum did. And that was those are the guys who did like Sharknado and all those kinds of films out throughout the years. But that was like, I think I didn't get paid anything. It was like my manager was like, "Hey, here's an opportunity to be in a movie." I'm like, "All right, let's do this."
Yeah.
I'm gonna play Phipps.
Yeah, so it's like I don't need to eat. I don't need money. That's hey, cool.
I'm all about the art, man.
Yeah. So I was like frat guy doing the Panty Raid, and it was pretty simple, but it was fun as the first thing doing when I was out here.
Well, it's always fun doing a Panty Raid, regardless of whether you're acting or in real life. So.
Oh yeah, right. So that's like a bucket list thing. It's like Panty Raid. Okay, done.
Yeah,
I did that. We're finished. Moving on. Now I think I'm gonna visit Andersonville instead. What the hell? What's gonna happen in Andersonville after a Panty Raid? You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
Sergeant of the artillery. Look at this. You're doing some wild stuff here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, I'm like,
You've completely befuddled us.
I know.
Actually.
I don't even. I started with the Panty Raid, and I don't know where to go from there.
You can't get any better than that.
Well, I mean, I don't know. There was a segue into Andersonville, which, I don't know how you go from Panty Raid to Andersonville, but we can do it.
Absolutely,
we have the technology.
Yep, exactly. So, I mean, how long was it till you got your first paying gig in LA? And were you like, what was like the private life then? I mean, were you waiting tables? Were you that guy? Were you the stereotypical LA starving artist?
Kind of. Not really. Kind of that. What I did was I managed a coffee shop here.
Okay.
So it was like I was like swinging cappuccinos.
Okay.
So it's kind of the same thing, but not really.
Right.
So food and beverage. But I think you do what you got to do, and I had a blast, and that's actually where I met my wife was at that coffee shop.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's all good.
That's cool. And she's a writer also, correct? Your wife.
Say again?
Your wife is a writer, correct?
She is. Yeah, she's writing Preacher 6.
Yes, nice.
Oh, that's her project. Awesome. Very cool.
Very awesome. Yeah, I'm totally excited about it.
Is that the first project you guys are going to work on together, or have you done other stuff together?
No, this will be the first project that we've done together. We've done like, you know, a ton of stuff not together, and basically the way that it happened was this other project that I was working on, which shall not be named. Basically, I was working on it for 5 years, and then the writer of it kind of lost his mind, and it's like as soon as you start talking about money with people, you know, like if things become real or potential, or like, hey, you could be a millionaire. Of course, that's really hardly not ever going to happen. But it's like once people start thinking like that, then they lose their freaking mind. And it's like all of a sudden, it's like it's about them and my project, and I'm going to control this and all that kind of stuff. And it's like you see ego completely destroy the whole situation, which is what happened. So after 5 years of like kind of nurturing a project, this guy loses his mind, and then we don't do the project. So I'm talking to my wife, and like, all right, well let's do something that we control so that this never happens again.
Right.
So
exactly. Sometimes that's what it really comes down to, especially with independent film, is you start to think, hey man, to get this going, we have to do it ourselves. You know, when you put it in the hands of studios, sometimes it is, you're waiting on a lot of different things, but the one way to do it is to make it yourself. Then you can be as artistic as you want, and the more control, you know, in some ways, the better. Of course, there's more responsibility, which makes it tough, but absolutely, you have to make it happen.
Yeah, you said it all. I think that without repeating what you said, I mean, there's the two ways to go. You know, it's like you either are in the system and you have been working at the studios and worked your way up, and you know all of that happens the way that happens, or the nepotism of Hollywood, and you know you're a son of somebody famous, and here's your shot, you know, with a $5 million project. Good luck, you know, or you like us. You know, you just kick and scratch, and you know, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Let's go kick some ass and see what happens.
Definitely.
So,
you know, what's funny is these days, like, the technology is there for regular people to do these type of things. You know, that's non-studio. I remember when we were younger watching Movie Magic, it was. And, you know, they said, oh, you know, one day there'll be a Spielberg just sitting in his, you know, bedroom or in his basement. And, you know, look what he could put together. So technology is there now, which is nice. When I was young, when I wish I had this technology, you know, I had one of those old camcorders, and, you know, it didn't have the same editing power it does today. So we got to keep rolling forward. Especially.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, you know, with $10,000 camera, you know, now you can shoot the same kind of quality that you could for, you know, the $100,000 cameras. Yep. So it's definitely a lot more accessible to people that are just trying to do something.
Right. And then it becomes up to you what you do with that technology, which brings me to the cinematography.
Oh, yeah. And then, because then the big thing there is once you have the technology is don't suck.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That's going to be a quote. I'm going to have to, that's going to go on Twitter, I'm thinking.
Once you have the technology,
right on, because, you know,
suck.
because you bought all this stuff. You got all this. I got, like, the surround sound and, you know, like the 3D, you know, modeling with the goggles and stuff, and you suck. So just like, you know, so you got to be good at it.
Definitely.
Sucking is all, you know, it's subjective, right? It's subjective. I mean,
I don't know. Sometimes it just sucks.
So, what exactly is your approach to acting? Are you know, method acting? How do you tackle a certain role that you're taking on?
To me, it's pretty simple. It's whatever the character is, you basically get out of his way for whatever's got to happen. So it's like, you know, like in The Chair, which is the horror film that is about to come out. It was Roddy Piper's last film.
Nice.
It's like, you know, we as the prison guards were all really horrible people, you know. So It's like, am I going to walk around being this like maniacal, horrible person, at home to my wife, and it's like, because it's like I'm method and I got to get into the character. It's like, no, go fuck yourself, So,
honey, I'm working here. I'm working here, honey.
Yeah. So I'm not about that. And basically, it's you just get out of the character's way. It's like we all know how to feel and laugh and cry and get pissed off and get angry and run and jump over things, whatever. If that's called for that, then you do that. And so it's really just getting out of the character's way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hear you. What?
But okay, don't let me oversimplify, because this is after. I went to performing arts high school and I went to Cal Arts, so I've taken all the different kinds of like methods and all this stuff. So I can say this because I know what works for me. So that doesn't mean that it won't work for somebody else.
I think you're being a little humble too. I'll be frank about it, right? I mean, I think you have a pretty good career. I'm not pretty good career. You have a great career in terms of your acting roles and what you've done. I mean, you have the resume. You've built up chops. To be able to do that. So I think you've become more comfortable with your acting abilities, right? So I think that probably speaks volumes. I mean, if we were having that same conversation back in 1992 before your panty raid, I'm sure you had a very different mindset going into that for your first role.
And for those of you who just turned in, yes, he said panty raid.
and method acting for something like that might not be the best idea either.
You could end up in jail, right?
Oh man! I'm so glad that's a topic this evening. So what else influenced you growing up? I mean, in terms of like actors or movies, did you have a favorite childhood movie growing up? I know you mentioned Fame was a big influence for you. That was a TV series. Any movies?
Yeah, I think the thing that influenced me the most as an actor was The Shining. With Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
And I think, so with his like captivating presence throughout the whole film, it's like you just like want to watch to see what he's doing. And I was like, wow, okay, so that's right there is something special,
Yeah.
And I think that that became like, all right, what is that? What is it that makes that magic? That people talk about this guy, and like, and you can repeat the lines and you can hear him in your head the way that he says them, so it's like, what is it that does that? So
Indy, I'm home. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Couldn't resist.
Exactly. Yeah. It's in there. It's in
Definitely in there. Absolutely.
We keep Wayne at the end of the table for that reason alone.
Awesome.
Absolutely. So, I hope to, in my career, I hope to have some moments like that where, that earworm is in there from something that I get to say, so that these are the goals.
Yeah, well, you're involved in some really high-profile independent films right now. I mean, The Chair, which a lot of people are aware of, Zombie with a Shotgun, which is currently in post, right? And The Preacher, which you're working on with your
Preacher
wife.
6, right?
So, I mean,
Preacher 6.
those, with all those films, you're obviously gonna get the opportunity to shine. I mean, they're so. Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, how was it, or how did that process go in terms of funding for Zombie with a Shotgun? Is that has it been a good time being a part of that project? How were you just acting? Are you also a producer on that, or?
Okay, Zombie with a Shotgun. Here's how that happened. Hilton Ruiz, the creator-director, he had contacted me on Twitter because of The Chair. Like, he knew that I did The Chair. And then so I said, well, we're like tweeting back and forth and DMing or whatever. And I was like, call me. So we get on the phone, and basically one thing led to another. It's like, what are you doing? With this project, you have like a bazillion followers, and you've done, the web series and stuff, and trying to do a film, but where's it going? What's happening? So out of that kind of short conversation, we're like, all right, well, let's do it. So we put the crowdfunding thing together, which of course without crowdfunding, like these films would not be made.
Yep.
It's like The Chair was done through Kickstarter, and Zombie with a Shotgun is Indiegogo, and whether these things ever see a nickel, you don't know. But so they're really fan-driven entities. So.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, you already have a built-in fan base for the release, right? I mean, that's kind of the beauty of doing something like that, and knowing that there's some justification in making the movie now, because you did get a fan base to back it, and I think they all exceeded their goals too. It wasn't like you guys couldn't meet your budgets. You guys met and exceeded, I believe.
Yeah, well, I think that was one of the things that gave Hilton and I confidence was that we do have a big following, like each of us individually, and it's like now, crowdfunding is not easy. It's I see so many people, I have 4,000 followers and I'm gonna launch a Kickstarter, and then you just see it sit there because it takes a lot more prep work and getting people interested way before you launch a project like that. That a lot of people, you just don't know. But I wouldn't know unless I had the experience of watching Peter Simeti do it with The Chair.
Can you give some examples of some of the steps that you have to actually go through besides just launching the Kickstarter?
Yeah, I would say get a following. Like is however you can do that. Whether you spend like 90 hours a day on Twitter and getting people to know who the hell you are, and that's part of it. Because if no one knows who you are, no one's going to care. So that becomes a big part of it. Is just getting, putting what you have done out in front of people, and it's like the people that are going to like it will follow you, and the others that don't, then who cares about them anyway, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
I kid. Yeah. So basically, you get the audience, you get people who are going to be interested before the project launches, so that you got like your people that are your fans that are like, all right, let's do this, and we can all make an impact in the beginning. Because in the beginning, that's when a lot of judgments are going to be made about the project. If you're sitting there a weekend and you got $200, then that doesn't give the rest of the whole project, or Kickstarter length, it doesn't give confidence. So people are going to go, oh, they only have $200. So that's something. It's like basically, even if it's like, hey, Mom, can you just throw in $1,000, just to make it look like there's something going on,
right.
And so because it all becomes, it's an illusion. So it's all like you have to basically build that illusion that makes people confident in what you're doing.
It's like putting money in a tip jar yourself and, hoping everyone else puts in as well sometimes. Yeah, you got to build that. Now, let me ask you, I saw one of the perks that were pretty cool. I think it was $1,000 or maybe $5,000 that you get to die a zombie death and be one of the zombies that actually get killed in a cool way. Did you have anyone for that?
Actually, someone, not the 5,000, but there is a 1,500, I think, where you can like be a zombie and come in and do that. And yeah, we did have somebody do that. And,
okay.
And yeah, he was a guy named Sam, and he was super cool, and he came in and kicked ass, and it was great. So it's like everybody wins, in a situation like that.
Sure.
That's cool.
Now, obviously, this launched from the original book and then was made into a web series. And now there's an innate following with that immediately because there's already footwork that's there. You weren't part of that original series, but the original actors that were in that series are also in this, correct?
One of them.
Yeah,
the lead, Braden. Yeah, the guy who was a zombie with a shotgun. So he went into the film. So yeah, but I believe that's the only cast member that transferred because like other people were doing other things, and people weren't available, and so that's how that happened.
What about, is the cinematographer the same? Is the music, is that the same person that was doing the web series for the movie?
I think that he's talking to music people right now and composers. So the crew is different.
Okay.
So it's basically Hilton being the director, and so he just kind of put together the crew that he wanted to use, and because he knows a lot of people. So I think it was just like who's available and who best fits the project.
Nice.
And he's here in New York, right? Did you guys do a lot of filming in New York? Or all of it?
We did all of it.
All of it?
Yeah, we did all of it right in Chinatown.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Yeah, bummer we didn't get to hook up while you were here in New York. We'll have to hit up Hilton and see if we can get a hold of him at some point.
I'm sure he'd be glad to talk. He's definitely makes himself available.
Cool. Well, let's talk about your other project that just released as well, The Chair. So I think that just went to festival, right? I saw that just got picked up or entered into festival.
Yeah, actually, it's just now getting accepted into festivals as we speak. And there was one that I know that Peter announced today that I'm not in front of my computer and I don't remember. But yeah, so the first one has been announced. It's a festival in Wisconsin. I do know that. And so I know that he's applied to several others. So I think we're going to be hearing in the next couple of weeks about that. And there's going to be a theatrical limited kind of release that if you sell enough tickets to the project per theater, then the event happens and you get to see it. So that's going to be happening around the country. And so it's like a slow rollout, and then it's going to end up, on all the platforms that you can stream and rent and, buy the DVD and all that stuff.
Yeah, I saw your Twitter post, your Twitter poll today about where do people watch movies. Is that are you doing a bit of research on your own to see where you're going to release stuff?
Yeah, you know what? I'm just curious.
Okay.
I'm just like, what's the landscape? What do people do now? It's like, is it cable? Is it the Amazon? Or it's like, I love DVD. So like the whole streaming thing. I mean, I understand it. I'm not an idiot, but I don't get it. It's because I love the physical stuff.
Right.
I love having my own DVD that I can stick in a machine whenever I want. Whereas like with the chips and the downloads and stuff like that, it's like the computer crashes and now you're out.
Right.
I think Wayne's got a box of 8 tracks for you too, if you want them.
You're actually talking to the right guy over there with Wayne.
Hey, but really, there is nothing like having your stuff. Even with the, iTunes and everything, it's very different digital. When you actually hold the CDs in your hands as well, like these are mine. But the only problem is it causes clutter. That's why they invented Computers Ryan. It's one thing, it saves on clutter, because especially when you move, believe me, that's a problem.
No, I know, but I mean, believe me, it's like it all works.
Yeah.
It all facilitates watching something. So it's like it doesn't really matter exactly how you watch it. If you are interested in seeing something, you're going to see it. But it's just like for me, just kind of getting the landscape of like, well, what's really happening, so what to kind of push as far as distribution goes. And the funny thing is that if you look on that list that I have, half of the people are interested in DVDs and Blu-rays.
Okay.
They would rather do that than stream, which was surprising, because I'm thinking everybody's talking about, yeah, it's all going streaming now. But then if you ask people, there's 800 people that, have responded to that quiz, as it were. And it's like, I think it's about 50% or something like that to DVDs and Blu-ray.
Well, I think the group of guys you're talking to right now would all prefer DVDs.
Yeah, I got it right here, actually. It was 37% Netflix, 30% DVD and Blu-ray, 26% in the theater, and then you had a bunch of others, the Amazon, Hulu, and iTunes lumped together, and that was really low. I'd be curious to see if, like, Amazon was broken out on its own, but regardless, I mean, I think Netflix, I think, wins the war at nighttime viewing and TV. I mean, they have way more series than movies, though.
Yeah, well, Netflix is kind of like it's like they're the big kid in the room,
Yep.
you know. And the problem for filmmakers is, yes, it does give you a lot of exposure, but it's not like, if you watch it, the filmmaker is not getting money from how many times people watch it on Netflix. Mm-hmm. It's like it's a buyout.
Right.
So I mean, you're going to sell your project for however much, $2,000 for a 2-year contract in Netflix. I'm not going to do that.
Absolutely.
And
you see,
so it's like, so basically, go ahead.
I'm saying most of the money actually comes from DVD sales a lot of times, especially for smaller movies. The movie proceeds are one thing in the theater, and usually the DVDs, when you look back and see, the gross income, it's definitely more with the DVDs. So we're kind of hoping that does remain still. Like you said, you're not getting a credit each time someone watches Netflix. You're right. So as far as a business standpoint, you definitely still want the DVDs around, something physical that people could buy themselves.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, also it's like, I think if you have something that people, then that's why there wasn't a lot of stuff on Netflix. I mean, you find a lot of obscure stuff, a lot of super low budget and whatever, for the people that just want the exposure of it. But it's like, if you're looking to actually make a living so that you can go and do another project, then that is not the answer. You mean like
Deathgasm and I don't know what else I've watched on Netflix recently, but yeah, Deathgasm was up there.
Yeah, so I mean, they probably got like $1,500 or $2,000, to have their film on there for 2 years.
Wow,
and you put in so much time and effort and energy and stuff like that. It's like, that's why people wait on Netflix. So it's like it'll come out in the DVDs and rentals and, try to get in the theaters and stuff like that. And Netflix will be like down the line, basically, when nobody cares anymore. And, and then you can just throw it on Netflix to see what they give you. Because at that point, you're not fighting the whole thing. But, if you throw it up on Netflix first, you're done.
Well, I was going to say,
you're not going to make anything.
Smart move for you guys, right? With the movie feature coming out, I mean, essentially, you could sell the web series potentially to Netflix as a, more of like an advertiser preamble to the movie coming out, if it's a possible thing, if you could get that type of deal done. So like, selling the web series before the feature comes out, that way you have kind of the run up to the feature. This is not a bad thing.
Sal's our marketing guy. Yeah. He always comes up with good ideas.
Right on. Yeah, I'll run that by Hilton.
There you go.
You got him thinking now.
Yeah, I know that he's got people already talking about it and interested, and but I just heard, I'm wary of everybody as far as distribution, because I've heard so many nightmares, from friends of mine that have made films, and it's like, yeah, so my sales agent shows that they have $80,000 that came in, but I only got 8 of it. And so how does that work? It's like, we're basically they're papering, well, we had to fly to this place, for that festival, and then we had to rent this, amazing hotel room, on your dime.
Right.
And, oh, by the way, you paid for the plane ticket too, for us to go there. We're trying to sell your movies,
Sure.
So it's like,
yeah,
it's like, you got to be smart these days, because you're swimming with sharks, and everyone wants to make money, off of the creators. So there you have it.
Absolutely.
Well, let me ask you something, Kyle. You are now moving on to a new project, and we've already talked a little bit about it, Preacher 6. What can you tell us about this? There's not much information out there yet. So what can you tell us without spoiling anything?
Well, I can tell you that Preacher 6 it's kind of it's going to be a grindhouse type film with lots of action and blood and comedy and demons and all of that kind of stuff. So it's about a small town preacher that comes to the big city and ends up fighting evil in a literal sense. So that's where you see the artwork on the site, holding the sword and, with the gun and, all this kind of stuff. So because the preacher ends up, battling demons, like the real ones. So
cool.
So that's kind of the gist. And there's some super cool characters that are with him and help him out. And, it's like it becomes this kind of like a bunch of superhero type people that are not superheroes, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
How far in the process are you with that one?
We are in the development right now. We're actually launching the fundraiser next month, so we'll start that up in October on Indiegogo, and that's going to be another 24 hours a day on the computer, trying to beg, borrow, and buy a t-shirt, get a bumper sticker, it's like all that stuff, man. But but we're definitely excited about it.
Nice. We'll put out some reminders at that time as well from us to remind people that that's what's going to happen in October. Now, one thing, it might be a little too early to think this way, but first of all, when is Zombie with a Shotgun coming out? What is your estimate, do you think?
Well, I could say definitely 2017, but right now we're not quite done filming. My character's wrapped, but there's other scenes that we have to get. So if you see the fundraiser now, basically trying to raise money to finish it and then post production, and so I don't know, maybe it'll be done in 6 months.
All right, nice.
But that's fingers crossed on it. I mean, it's like the chair we shot over a year and a half ago, and there was like lots of issues in post and stuff like that have delayed it coming out, which is kind of like now why it looks like there's so much going on. There's the chair and Zombie with the Shotgun and Preacher 6, and it's like they all just happen to be happening now in various forms. But it's like the way that the timeline of it, it's like we shot the chair a year and a half ago.
Yeah, you seem like a real busy guy.
Very cool. You know what, man? We are the new wave. Yep. So it's kind of the Wild West out there right now as far as filmmaking. So it's you're either one of the big guys or we're just all kind of in the same creative pool together, trying to make something happen.
Hey, Kyle, so thanks for doing this. I was going to say.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Oh, dude, absolutely. The way I look at this is, we're all in this together.
Yep.
As entertainment type folks. So it's all good.
Right. We want to thank Kyle Hester for joining us today. Please follow him on Twitter. So we wish you well, wish you great success in the future, and we'll definitely touch base with you another time.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you for having me on, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Have a great night.
Bye.
All right.